debriefing both of your work sessions. And yeah, so we'll debrief both of those sections, as work session 1 did cover the SLO cycle, the components, and SLO support items. But before we do that, we're just going to quickly just go over those questions from the quiz. And I'm not going to share the screen, but I'm just going to just read the questions, and you can type the answer in the chat just for our understanding. So the first question for work session 1 quiz was, which part of the SLO process does not include the principal or the SLO approver? And so you had the option of the SLO approval stage, the SLO development process, the SLO summative rating, the final review, and the mid-course check-in. So which was the correct answer? You can type it in or just yell it out over the mic.
The SLO development cycle.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yep. All right. So the next question was, with the Scde recommendations for SLOs, would it be appropriate for an educator to start a first semester SLO after October 3rd? And that's true or false. You can put your response or yell it out.
It's false.
False.
All right. Absolutely. That is false. The districts are required to, y'all are required to use our SLO scoring rubric. Is that a requirement? True or false?
False.
That's false. We talked about it earlier, right? And you also heard about it during those slides, that you can have your own rubric, but you have to let us know when submitting your DEP plan. Okay. Which educator would more and likely be eligible to complete the TLG? Would it be a first-year teacher, a literacy coach, a principal, or a school counselor?
The literacy coach.
Right. Good. All right. And this is the only time that the SLO can be modified, and I shouldn't have to read those responses. And that is when?
Mid-course.
At the mid-course conference.
But
Absolutely.
let me ask you a quick question while you're on that one,
Yes.
because I got that one wrong. So I ended up putting all of them because approval, technically, they could change it then too, because if it's not, like, I've had teachers who it's not ready to be approved because they need to make adjustments.
Right, but after it's approved,
Okay.
so after it's approved, what would be the only
Mid-course
time?
then.
Right,
But they
absolutely.
can make adjustments.
Before.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm correct?
yeah. During that approval conference, right. So
Really, they can do anything.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So the principal or the person, the designee, could say, "Hey, can you go back and add this, or modify this, or see some changes that need to be made before that final approval, or not final approval,
Okay.
but before the initial approval." Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and districts y'all are required to use SC Lead to manage the SLO and TLG process. Is that true or false?
False.
That's false, right? Most districts do use SC Lead, but it's not a requirement. Some districts do choose to report at the end of the year. And the last question in that section says, the section of the SLO template. This section of the SLO template is where teachers will document the evidence used to show that students have met learning objective. Is it section 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I said 2.
I think it was 3.
But the correct answer was 3. The correct answer was 3. And if I can go just quick,
Okay.
that section, section 3 is instructional strategies. That's the instructional strategy section. So that's where you would put that information.
Okay.
All righty. Okay. So we'll get ready now to go ahead and debrief the workstation 1 activity. So go ahead and retrieve your district decisions worksheet if you have it, and we'll just have maybe one person to respond to each of these questions. And as we respond, we want to listen. That may help you process, how you want this process to look in your district as well. All right, so in your district, who will be responsible for setting learning goals and why? Who will be responsible for setting those learning goals and why? And we'd love to hear from a participant over the mic.
I put teachers. So obviously we provide them with the training, but then they're responsible for pulling those standards and developing the goal.
Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else have anything different in your district? Who's going to be responsible for setting those learning goals? Some districts may not allow teachers to set those learning goals. So anything different in other districts? Okay. All right. And I'll just share what some other districts do. Some districts already have learning goals. Some districts allow principals to select the learning goals that all teachers in the school may focus on, or all math teachers may focus on, or all ELA teachers may focus on. So it could look different in different districts. So we just wanted to get some feedback for the good of the group to give you all some different ideas. Okay, but we have seen that when teachers have that autonomy to select those learning goals, it makes the process more meaningful. But districts do have their reasons for selecting those goals. All right, second bullet: who will be responsible in your district for selecting SLO assessments and why?
In our district, we provide them with a list of possible assessments, and then teachers are able to select based on their learning goal. And then during that approval conference, um, the administrator and the teacher have conversations to confirm that they're aligned with the learning goal.
Awesome, thank you so much. Kristen, in your district, how does it work with selecting assessments for the SLO?
We're a charter school district, so each of our schools kind of do things differently. Um, so it depends, but the schools have the autonomy to be able to choose for themselves.
Okay, all right, that's fair. And Kalandra, what about you in your district? Who will have that responsibility? Miss Bradley, we'll come back to Kalandra. Miss Bradley, in your district, who will be responsible for selecting those SLO assessments?
I'm actually on the state level, so I'm
Oh,
not at
gotcha.
an actual
Right.
school, but at the school, at the district where I came from, it was
Hmm.
basically done the same way. We had a list of assessments to choose from, and the teachers were given the autonomy to kind of choose which assessment from the list of assessments that were given to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you uh, for your response. All right. And then the last bullet: will the district allow teachers to adjust learning goals or other components of the SLO based on the mid-course check-in? And that's yes or no, and then why or why not? Because I mean, there's some districts may say we don't allow our teachers to change anything at the mid-course. So let's hear from someone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet. What about
So
you, Francis? Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say in Lexington 1, we do allow teachers to adjust their learning goals or other things at the mid-course, just based on, things that have happened or, extenuating circumstances. But we try to have that flexibility.
Good, good, good. All right, Francis, in Sumter County, um, um, are your teachers are allowed to adjust those learning goals?
I don't know. This one is first time me, so I'd have to ask, do we allow it or do we not? So that's
Right,
why I'm
right.
writing all of the responses.
Good, good, good. But that's definitely something that you want to take back and be able to share with your teachers if they're going to be able to adjust those learning goals at the mid-course. But I think it's fair to do it. It's something that we recommend from the State Department. And so, it's a time where teachers can see that students aren't making adequate progress towards the learning goal, or they could have already accomplished that goal. So it's time to make some changes. All right.
Rodney, I'll hop in,
Go ahead.
just in the spirit of sharing of what other districts are doing or what their rationale
Mhm.
is. So one of my districts actually literally informed me that, hey, we do not allow our teachers to adjust their goals mid-course because our thinking is that we want them to really know that we set high expectations, and also coming from uh if you go back to the beginning, we tell them to make sure that they are smart goals, right? So we just don't want them to be like, oh, we're going to set an arbitrary goal and because we know it's going to be adjusted during the mid course. So to them, they've taken a stance that way, but they have communicated amongst all their educators that that's the expectation for their district. That's it.
Thank you so much, Faye. And that's why we like to kind of, share those responses for the good of the group, because districts do different things for different reasons. So that's why we asked you to explain why. So, it helps bring clarity to decisions that districts make that as it pertains to the SLO process. All right, we'll move along to the next slide. All right, and I'll go ahead and review the SLO PGDP template that was discussed during your work session. And we'll first address the inclusive learning environment section, which is C and D, right, from section 3. In our Department of Education, we recognize the disproportionalities among races in student academics, disciplinary outcomes, and college and career readiness opportunities. This reveals that there is important work to be done to ensure that educators are intentional about creating a safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment for all students and ensuring that classrooms are spaces where all students learn the knowledge, skills, and characteristics needed for success in meaningful ways. So from this on last year, the South Carolina State Department of Education adopted new language from the environment domain of our SCTS 4.0 teaching standards to better describe classrooms that are conducive to teaching and learning for all students. So the inclusive learning strategy document describes the connection between these revisions and research-based practices. This strategy is now part of the SLO process and should be articulated in the reference section on this slide. Okay, next slide. All righty, and we just talked about this, but this is a portion of the template, and this was updated on last year to pretty much follow the conference process from beginning, middle to end. So we added this to the template. Before last year, there was not a place to sign for the mid-course conference on the template. So we've added it not only to the template, but also to sclead.org for those of you who use sclead to manage the evaluation process. So you can go back, Faye. So this is pretty much the document and the section that you would use. Of course, A is for educator reflections, and then B is for just general reflections about the mid-course. Okay. All right, Faye, we can move on. Okay, so there was also an addition last year to the evaluation process and to the student growth or the growth part of our evaluation process. And that was the addition of the teacher leadership goal, also known as the TLG. And you had an opportunity to listen to some slides that talked about the TLG during your work session. Um, This is on page 3 of the SLO PGDP template, not section 3, but page 3. Okay. There's also a link for you that was provided for you on the guidance document. I'm sorry, there was a link that was provided for you to the guidance document, I believe, in those slides. But what is a teacher leadership goal, right? So we got feedback from the field that teacher leaders neglect their growth as leaders when focused on student-centered SLO goals, right? Or we found out that it was hard for teachers to figure out if they had actually they met the business rules to complete an SLO. So from this, we recommend for districts and school leaders to allow teachers to substitute the TLG for the SLO for these particular teachers. And those are teachers who are seeking recognition for expertise, such as like national board certification, or for coaching teachers, because you have teachers who coach teachers, right? Districts, you also have the flexibility to allow educators to use the TLG as an additional professional goal. All right, so a PGDP goal, you can add that in addition to. All right. Um, Another reason why your district might allow teachers to complete the TLG over the SLO is because we really want to give teachers an opportunity to grow in the area of leading other teachers and growing their expertise. Teacher types that might complete the TLG might be an interventionist, and we talked about that earlier, an instructional coach, right? A cooperating teacher, a mentor teacher, a hybrid teacher leader, and those educators working on certification or recognition, again, that grows their expertise. All right. In the guidance document, you'll see the business rules for the TLG. But one thing that I will point out, when it, unlike the SLO, you have to have a minimum of 6 students. With the TLG, there is no minimum of teachers that a teacher leader will have to work with to be eligible to complete the TLG. Any questions on that? To some, that may be new because all districts didn't give their teachers that option last year, but we anticipate and we hope that more districts, if not all districts, will give teacher leaders that opportunity on this year. Any questions with the TLG process?
Rodney, would that have been what my district called a leadership growth plan this past year as an alternative
Was
to SLO?
they could have called it something differently. I'm not aware of that. Which district are you in again?
That's Lexington one, and my literacy coach ended up doing a leadership growth plan, and it was a professional goal.
Now they may have changed the name up some. I'm not aware of that, and I'm not sure. Faye, is that your district?
Hey, I believe Lexington 1 is under Dr. Howard, but
Okay.
since we did not enforce, we always say it's optional. So they may have put that under the professional goals section, which is also below the SLO, which would still make sense to me how they were doing that as an alternative. So what Roddy's presented is like the official one. Remember, with the roles, our agency, our office is providing you outlines and templates, and this is the one that we have created. So it still makes sense that you were put on something that's aligned to your leadership professional goals. But in terms of the specific TLG, this is the template that we presented.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. Any other questions about the teacher leadership goal? All righty. Well, we can move on to debrief work session 2, and I'm going to go to the little quiz first, and then we'll debrief. All right, so I'll read the questions, and hopefully you can remember. If not, we'll process that correct answer. All right, so the first question says that a quality SLO can take only 6 weeks to conduct if a teacher has at least 6 students, and
False.
that's false, right? We again, that's it should be false, but those teachers who are out on leave, we try to work with them. We don't like to go under 9 weeks, but if that's a special case, and a lot of times if it's a continuing GBE educator, that is their evaluation pretty much. So if we're able to count it and it doesn't have to be incomplete and it's close to 9 weeks, then we can allow them to complete that SLO. If you ever have any questions about it, feel free to give us a call here at the State Department. All right. Our office recommends for the SLO interval to end by what date? Is it May 1st, April 30th, April 15th, or June 1st?
April 30th.
April 30th. All right. Good. And that's for contract decision purposes. All right. to help you with those decisions. All right. Selecting and developing assessments for the SLO happens during which part of the SLO cycle? The first part, second, third, fourth, or fifth part of the cycle?
First.
First.
Yeah, yeah. When the
First.
teachers, yeah, absolutely. When the teachers getting everything together. Right. All right. When it comes to the attributes of appropriate assessments, how would you recognize that the assessment is rigorous? The assessment measures the appropriate content. The assessment requires students to demonstrate the appropriate level of knowledge, skill, or understanding, or the data is available in time to be used at all relevant points in the SLO cycle.
Knowledge, skill, and understanding.
Good. That's the second one. Absolutely. All right. And then regardless of district size, resources are always available for districts to purchase commercial assessments. True or false?
That's
False.
false.
That's false, right?
That's
Um,
false.
right. That's actually false. So if you got it wrong for selecting the correct answer, just know you did get it right. All right. The next one says each teacher has the expertise to develop a high quality assessment. We can't always
False.
assume that. Yeah, we just can't always assume that. Some teachers may need support, right, with developing a teacher-made high-quality assessment. Not to say that that shouldn't be an option for teachers, but some teachers may need some support being able to do that. Okay, that could be a PLC focus or some mentor teacher support in that area, right? Which topic was not covered in this section of the training? Was it describing the attributes of appropriate assessments? Begin to identify possible assessments, identify the components of the SLO, or describe the importance of assessments and creating high
Com-
quality
The
the components.
components of the SLO.
Right, right. And then the last one says name two types of quality assessments used for SLOs shared in the training slides. And what are those two types?
Standardized.
Well, well, it was two that was mentioned that you
I
all
said
should.
commercial and teacher
And teacher
created.
created.
Right, right. Those were the two. Uh-huh. And that was shared in those particular slides. Not to say those other ones can't be used, but in the slides we did say mention teacher created assessments as
And the
well as commercial assessments. And what was one con about the commercial assessments?
Might not have the money.
everyone don't have
Yeah,
the ability to purchase them.
yeah, yeah. And what was the con about the teacher created assessment?
They don't
All
have the
teachers
time.
may not be able to
Right,
create.
right. So as a district, it's up to you to see what way to go with creating those assessments for the SLO. All right. So thank you for your participation, and we'll go back to our slides now. All right. So, one second. So we'll now debrief the work session 2 activity, the SLO assessment selection district decisions, and you had to download and rename the document that was linked to the SLO training webpage. So what we want to do now, we simply just want to acknowledge and share for the good of the group which assessments are being used in our state, in our districts, in our schools to measure SLO outcomes for teachers. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with middle school, and you're welcome to record these responses so you'll kind of see what's out there, what different districts and different schools in our state are using uh, for assessments in the SLO. All right, so feel free to jump on the mic, and I'll start by having random participants just to share. And if needed, I'll call on specific individuals. All right. But in middle school, what are some assessments that are being used in your district at the in middle school? Actually, let's start with elementary. I'm sorry. What elementary? What are some assessments being used?
We use Star 360, early lit, Star 360 reading, iReady math.
Okay. Okay.
Same, we do STAR. We also do Linkit testing as well.
What was that last one? I'm not familiar with it now.
Linkit testing,
Link it.
Linkit, I'm gonna put in the chat. But we do
Thank you.
Linkit
Thank you.
testing and
And
as well.
what subjects? That is that for all subjects?
Main focus on ELA and math.
Math, good, good,
Mhm.
good. Okay, thank you for sharing. Any others for elementary out there that would be good to share with everyone?
I put MAP and Fontes and Pinnell, and
Yep.
Mhm.
Study Island. I honestly I don't know if Study Island is much anymore, but I know that was it used to go to
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. I remember using that particular program when I was in the classroom. Awesome, awesome. Any others for elementary? All right,
I
middle
don't know if
school.
it's
Middle.
I don't know if it's considered an assessment, but I think a lot of the elementary schools use Dreambox.
Are y'all familiar
Is
with
that
Dreambox?
in? Yes.
Yeah, it builds math skills.
Yes, same.
Yeah, Rodney, I think that's one of the tools that were actually purchased by the state,
Okay.
Dreambox to help promote math learning.
Okay. All right. All righty. All right. Middle school assessments. What are some assessments that are used at the middle school level? And we can just combine middle and high. So secondary. What are some um, high quality assessments used in your district for secondary?
I know they use USA Test Prep.
Yep, I've heard that being used. USA Test Prep. What else for secondary students?
We have a lot of teacher created, and a lot of times it's with teams. They create them together.
So your secondary teachers get together in teams and create assessments?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, yeah. And we also use
Good.
IXL. That's another one. But I just
Hmm.
in looking through SLOs, I've had a lot of teacher created assessments.
And nothing is wrong with that. Good. Special education. I know one that stands out for me is Ames Web. Any other tools or assessments used in special education that you all would like to share?
Would Lexia be one?
Colleagues, what about Lexia? Are you familiar? I'm not familiar with
I
Lexia.
know they use Lexia Elementary,
Hmm.
so it could be yes. That's the one I couldn't think of for elementary.
Okay. And any other special education assessment tools or different
We have
types of
some that use
assessments?
that Read 180 or system.
Read
I think
180
it's System
Systems 44.
44.
Mm-hmm.
Good, 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 good. So as your colleagues are sharing these different type of assessments that are being used in our state, it'll be a good idea to record some of these and possibly research to give your teachers and or whichever team at the district level decides to make these decisions. I'm sure you'll play a role in that. Be a great resource to share. So that's why we wanted to take this time to kind of hear what's being done out in the field. Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments about high quality assessments that you can use in your districts for SLOs? All right, awesome. Thank you all so much for your participation so far, and we're going to continue on. All right, so we're going to look at part 4 of our training today, and that's generating baseline data and establishing the learning objective. We've talked briefly about these, and we're going to continue the conversation. So during this time, we will begin identifying available baseline data in your district. We'll begin planning district expectations for teachers around gathering and analyzing baseline data for SLOs. And then we'll begin planning district expectations for teachers, establishing the SLO learning objective. And lastly, I'll go over our online SLO support resources that are available to you and that will be available after um, properly tuned. All righty. So this section talks about gathering and analyzing student data as a part of the SLO development process, and we can see that is an extensive and a part of the process, an important part of the process. And from feedback that we've gotten from districts, that we've gotten from teachers as well as school leaders, this process is more meaningful when teachers have the autonomy to participate in this part of the SLO cycle. Okay, so just understand that as you're making your district decisions, that the feedback that we've gotten is that teachers believe that the SLO process is more meaningful because before um, I got here, or when I first took the job back in 2019, a lot of the feedback that we got before going to the simplified version is that the SLO was just something to do. A lot of educators didn't see the value in doing the SLO. So our goal was to, hear what teachers had to say, what educators had to say, and to revamp the SLO process to where it is more meaningful for teachers. All right, next slide. All right, so identifying baseline data in your district. Well, baseline data comes from the pre-assessment given to students. Okay, so that's where that baseline data is going to come from. The SLO process involves pre-assessing students, providing instruction, right? Progress monitoring along the way, and then lastly, post-assessing students to measure their growth throughout the SLO interval. When collecting baseline data, teachers should explain what type of pre-assessment they are giving, how many questions, the type of questions, and how the assessment will be scored, especially if using a rubric. Teachers should also summarize the baseline data from the pre-assessment by identifying students' overall strengths and weaknesses. Teachers should target the most important content standards of the course. There are district decisions around baseline data that teachers will use in the SLO. So districts are able to set rules and give guidance on what kind of baseline data teachers should include in their SLO. So you do have that right, or you do have that flexibility to select the baseline data that teachers should use, or like some districts have done, give them a list of different assessments that can be used. But if so, meaningful baseline data should describe the students in terms of groups, describe student performance over time, inform the learning objective, as well as inform the instructional strategies. All right, let's see how many people we have. We may not have to go to breakout rooms. One, two, three. Yeah, I think we can do this without going into breakout rooms. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at some decisions that you have to make around baseline data. So I think I can drop this document in the chat for you, so you won't have to go looking for it. I'll do that here in a second, but I'll just go ahead and read those. I'll ask someone, please read bullet 1 for me.
Locate the document found on the SLO District Training Resources page entitled Baseline Data Activity.
Okay, all righty. All right, the next one.
In your breakout room groups, you will discuss the 4 questions in the document to guide your district decisions around baseline data used for SLOs in your district.
Okay, and the last one.
You will designate one person to take notes and one person to share out to the group during the debrief when we come back together.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready to drop this link in the chat, and I'll explain how we're going to do this activity. We're going to modify. We're not going to go to breakout rooms because typically we have more than one participant from the same district, and this gives those district staff people time to kind of work together to complete this. But since I don't think we have many from the same district, we'll allow you to do it independently. Um, next slide, Faye. All right, so this is how the actual doc looks, and I'm dropping it in the chat now. And what you'll do, you're going to download it, but make a copy to record your own individual responses. You can type your responses below the questions, or you can record them on a separate document. Really doesn't matter, but you're just going to use the document to process your thoughts for this activity. We'll give you about 12 to 15 minutes to complete this activity. And what we'll do, we'll set the time, and you can cut your video off, your camera off, and you can go ahead and start looking at the baseline data district decisions document. And what we'll do after a few minutes, we'll come back and just debrief the activity, and we'll go ahead and um, get through the slides for this afternoon. So I think we'll probably wrap up a little early today since we have a small group. But I just dropped the link in the chat. It's 1:05. I'll check back in at 1:15, 1:17ish. But simply just you'll just follow it, just answer the questions there, and each question has 2 to 3 bullets up under it to help your thinking, process your thinking for the initial question. Are there any questions, or is there anyone that can't access this particular document?
Rodney, I'll jump in before they have questions. If when Rodney says make a copy, you can download it and save it. Or if you are logged in into your Google account, this second link will force you to make a copy of the document without having to download and save it.
Thank you, Faye.
You are welcome.
All right, so I'll check. Y'all can turn your cameras off and everything to work on this document, but I'll check back in about 1:15, 1:16. See how we are. All right, y'all can go ahead. All right, I have what 116. Are y'all ready to start back? And if you can complete this later if you need more time as well. Pretty much just to guide your thinking around decisions that you have to make as a district when it comes to baseline data for your teachers.
Yeah, Rodney, that was a little tough just for me, just because I'm still in the role of a principal right now. And so
All right,
it would probably be more helpful for me just to listen to what others share at this point.
absolutely.
This is Francis. I was trying to determine too, well, one, because I've never been a teacher, so I've only had been at district level. How do, I mean, how do we go about making these decisions? Where do we find the data? When it said instructional strategies, I guess I need to research whatever it is, get with the Office of Academics to figure out what it is we use.
Right. So yeah, a lot of this collaboration may come as it depends on your district makeup. Districts are made up differently when it comes to different departments. So I guess it would be up to you to really look at these guides to your decisions around the SLO process and look at which departments could help you, um, you know, establish how the process will look from the district's perspective. So definitely, and I'm in your district, so I support your district. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. All right, so let's go ahead and debrief this activity. Faye, if you can go to the next slide. All right, so we'll look at that first bullet, and I'll ask someone to please read it.
Does your district see value in the SLO process when teachers are allowed to select baseline data? Or does your district select the baseline data for teachers to use in the SLO process? Please explain.
All right, let's go to some Lindsay. Lindsay, I'd like for you to share a response for that, please.
So our district curriculum team is the one who sets our SLO goals, and so they are heavy, heavy believers in map data. And so they set it. We use map data for the baseline and for the final data.
Okay, okay. And Lindsay, which district are you in? I can't remember right offhand.
Darlington.
You're in Darlington.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay. So their district pretty much manages that. Okay, no problem at all. Kristen, um, I'd like to hear a response from you for that first bullet.
Again, it's kind of up to our schools. We don't, uh, we don't, we're not really involved with selecting the
Yeah,
baseline data for them.
gotcha. So you guys let your schools do that. All righty. The second bullet says, what are your district's next steps in supporting teachers with identifying and using baseline data in the SLO process? Let's hear from someone who haven't spoken yet.
We are just now using the iReady curriculum. And so with that assessment comes a growth goal, but then a stretch goal. And so I think that we would probably need to do some additional support and explanation so teachers understand the importance of that stretch goal. Otherwise, you never get to where you're trying to get to. So
All
some more
right.
PD around that.
Good. What are other districts doing as far as next steps in supporting teachers with identifying and using baseline data in the SLO process? Because they'll have to be able to do this to be able to show growth over the course of the interval.
As I said, I'm on the state level, but from what I can remember, what we did in the district that I came from, and I forgot when we talked about pre-assessments, we used map data. And of course, it came with the growth goals as well. So we relied on that a lot when it came to the baseline data, as well as the progress data,
Mo-
monitoring the
Right.
progress as well. So we relied heavily on that map data to develop that baseline data as well as monitoring their progress.
Good, 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 good. Yeah, that's no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say mine kind of went along with MAP. But I feel like so a lot of our teachers, especially elementary, they are using MAP as baseline, which is wonderful, but the MAP assesses so much that it doesn't always like there. I'm trying to focus more on like going down to the strands and focusing on the actual goal that they're focused on. Because just because they grew in MAP isn't showing that their reading comprehension increased. So
Right.
having them being able to read the reports and then also bringing
Right.
in other types of evidence. That's like my focus, I would say, for next school year is encouraging teachers to use more. A lot of them are just so, I feel, kind of stuck on MAP that I want to support them in using other types of assessment as well.
Right, and that's one thing we try to do. We've tried to do for the past few years is really get districts to look at the benefits of using those commercial assessments or using map data and those assessments where it's kind of broad. It measures a broad spectrum, as well as you may not get those results in time before April 30th. So, we tried to share with districts, how teachers feel about, they feel that the process is more valuable, has more value when they are included in a lot of the decisions. So, we really wanted to help districts kind of see things from a different perspective. And I like how you just explained how you all are looking at other ways to make the process more meaningful when using map, but looking at other pieces of data as well to ensure that the students are meeting their academic goals. So that's awesome. um, anyone else anyone else as far as next steps in supporting teachers with using baseline data in the SLO process?
It's been my experience with Erskine that a lot of data is provided at the school level. And as a principal, I think it's important to try to encourage teachers to develop goals or objectives that are related to weaknesses identified in MAP or other testing. Like in math, it could be operations, algebra, geometry.
Hmm.
But at the school level, if you identify the areas of weaknesses or even a weakness in a subgroup, it would be easier for teachers to initiate that process for developing an objective.
All right. That's creative. I like that idea. Again, there's no one way for a district to allow teachers to complete the SLO process. I've heard some very innovative ways of doing that, and it's just good to share with other districts what options are out here with the SLO process. Um, of course, we're talking about baseline data here, but something I just want to reiterate is that the progress monitoring piece is very important because a lot of times we look at the baseline data and then we look at that final assessment, right? But sometimes we forget or don't talk about what happens in between, and how else will we know if students are making adequate progress if we're not looking at those informal assessments that are progress monitoring along the way or along the interval. So, it's key for teachers to be able to progress monitor to see if students are making that progress from the initial baseline assessment, to be able to make that determination at the mid-course, right? That the teacher may need to make some changes in the learning goal. All right. Next slide. So someone already mentioned this type of baseline data, and this is an example of baseline data used in an elementary school or an elementary SLO that's focused on reading. This assessment is from a research-based literacy program that someone just mentioned, Fountas and Pinnell. This pre-assessment data was used in a teacher's SLO to show the students' reading level at the beginning of the SLO interval. And you can see there will be a few more times that the data will be taken to see where the students are and where they need to be. And this data is used to differentiate instruction and to personalize learning throughout the SLO process in order for each student to show growth over the course of the SLO interval. And of course, that's different from the the GBE that we did before the SLO. Right now, we're looking for each, where before with the GBE model, we were looking at the total class percentage. We want 80% of our students to be on grade level or above or to pass the assessment, where now we're looking at individual student performance. So we're looking at each of our students to show growth. So for example, here on this chart, you may see student in blue that's approaching expectation. So that student may not get to where some of the students are who are already meeting expectation, but the goal would be over the course of the SLO interval is for each student listed here on this chart to show growth each time uh, um, their growth is measured. All right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to listen to, um, actually, hold on a second. Yeah, yeah. So the next slide, Faye. And I think, hold on a second. Yeah, we'll skip this one. We'll skip this slide here. We'll move on. Yeah. All right. We'll look at now establishing the learning objective. Okay. And that's the last part of the SLO development process. So that's step 5 and number 1, establishing the learning objective. All right. All right. So this is the process. All right. Teachers are to indicate the learning objective on the page, on page 1, on that first page of the SLO PGDP template. Their teachers will be able to identify 1 to 2 high priority content standards and indicators or competencies for the profile of a South Carolina graduate for the learning objective. Teachers are then to describe what the students will be able to do at the end of the SLO interval related to the priority standard or competency used in the SLO. All right. Teachers will then have to share what evidence will be needed to show that students have met the learning objective at the end of the SLO interval. And so, of course, you have access to these learning objectives. I'm sorry, the priority standards and um, the graduate competency. So you do have access to those and the training resources. All right. So you all have considerations to look at, certain, different considerations for teachers selecting those learning objectives. Some of you have already shared how that looks in your district, but here are some questions or some considerations. Will the district set initial learning objectives for teachers? Okay, with that, what will the model or formula be for setting the learning objective, and what criteria will be taken into account? Will teachers have to calculate the objective themselves, or will it be done for them via an online platform? So that's something to think about. Someone please read the second bullet for me.
Will
Will
teachers set their
teachers,
own learning objective?
go ahead.
Will teachers set their own learning objective based on data? What guidance will the district provide around setting learning objectives? What criteria will the district set for setting learning objectives? And will teachers be able to consult with teacher leaders or content experts about the rigor of their learning objectives?
Right, right. So as a district, what guidance are you going to give to your principals, right? When it comes to setting learning objectives? Is it going to be you're going to handle it, or are you going to allow schools to do their own thing? Are you going to give them some parameters? So that's just something to think about right now. And as you get ready for the next school year, what criteria will the district set in general for learning objectives, right? And then the next part, will teachers be able to consult with teacher leaders or content experts about the rigor of their learning objectives? So we're talking about that development process, right? And so as they're developing their SLO, will they have access to support at the school level, at the district level, before ever even meeting with the principal to see if that SLO is rigorous, right? So that just makes the process easier and more meaningful as well by having teachers to have that outlet or that support to establish high quality SLOs when thinking about the learning objective and basing it on actual student data. So that's a good idea to have some type of support and to have that, to think about it from the district level, how that's going to look in the schools. Okay. Here are teacher considerations for setting the learning objective. How would teachers connect the learning objective to instructional strategies, right? What instructional strategies will be used to ensure that lower performing students do not fall further behind? Because at that baseline data, you may see that, and you will see, or teachers will see, right, that there are students who will start off below grade level or below other students where the average of the class is performing. So what instructional strategies will be used? Teachers have to be able to know what strategies. That's all a big part of the SLO process, is knowing what strategies you can use to help those students grow, especially those ones that are already behind. And one thing we truly believe, this is just good teaching practices all the way around, right? The SLO is just an example of good teaching practices all the way around. Secondly, what instructional strategies will be used to ensure that lower performing students can make progress towards closing their achievement gap, right? And a lot of times, just not during the data from the baseline assessment, but trending data from other assessments, from reports from previous years. That will also be good data for teachers to use to help students close their achievement gap, right? We don't talk much about trend data as much as we did with the long form of the SLO, but trend data can be a plus or be beneficial to teachers to look at, where students have been in the past to be able to identify where they need to be. What instructional strategies will be used to ensure that students are consistently demonstrating proficiency to continue to grow and develop advanced skills. So a lot of times we think about those low performance students, but as a district, we also have to think about those high performance students and what support is needed for teachers to help those students who may have scored high at the initial assessment or with that baseline assessment. How can we continue to challenge students who are already performing at a high level? So teachers may need support in that area. So something to think about from the district level, and how you're going to support your school leaders to be able to support teachers with ensuring these particular students can continue to grow and develop their advanced skills. And then lastly, what instructional strategies will be used to engage, again, those high performing students, all right? So that's important. We can't always just think about the kids at the bottom and the kids in the middle. We also have to think about those students that are high performing so that we could continue to challenge those students um, each and every day. Okay. All right. How will teachers monitor student progress? All right. We talked about that. I just mentioned that a few slides ago. All right. How will teachers monitor student progress? What kinds of formative assessments and informal formative data collection will teachers use? We just can't assume that teachers know, how to progress monitor during the SLO cycle. So, um, how will you support teachers with collecting that type of data? Okay, to monitor them along the way. And then what kind of interim goals or benchmarks will teachers set formally or informally to ensure that students are on track? So yeah, teachers will have them, they have the mid-course check-in along with the beginning and the summative conference. But what other check-ins? Because, with your progress monitoring, there should be some checks in between. Okay, we're looking at that progress monitoring data. You can clearly see if those students. So if you're the teacher's SLO started in September, we shouldn't wait till December, right, to see where students are. Right. So the district will need to ensure that principals are making supporting teachers with being able to ensure that students are on track throughout the SLO process. So that could come from training your principals or principals training teachers or districts setting up that training to just kind of share how the SLO process is going to look, for the year for teachers. So that's very important. All right. So Faye is gonna we're wrapping up pretty early today. Again, it's a very small group, and we usually take more time when we have a larger group to debrief and hear from everyone. But mainly, we want to ensure that you understand the SLO process from the district level. Make sure you're aware of any changes, any updates to the SLO process. Answer any questions that you may have. Ensure that you have a contact person here at the State Department. If you're new to your role in next year, I know a couple people will be moving into district level positions. So we want to ensure that you know where to go for support, who to contact for support when it comes to the SLO process. Because again, like we explained, this is a part of the evaluation, the overall evaluation for teachers in our state. So we want to ensure that you are equipped with the tools and resources you need to carry out the SLO process in your districts. That's all I have for you right now. I'll chime in on some few additional resources that we're working on to help support you all at district office. But before Faye comes on with the support resources and everything, are there any questions on any of the content that we've shared today, as far as this morning or this afternoon, or any of the asynchronous slides that you had a chance to listen to this morning? Any questions?
No question here, but I just appreciate how thorough and concise you guys have been. It's been very, very helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it as well. I do have several questions, but they're like district specific. Is there any way I could stick around for just a few minutes afterwards so I don't hold everybody?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll say that, and that's our protocol normally anyway. I think you know that. Yeah. So anyone else that may have some questions, and may want to listen to what is shared as far as these questions and responses, feel free to hang out once we're done, and we'll support you any way possible. But again, any other questions before I kick it over to Faye? All right. Well, thank you again, and I'll be back with you here shortly. All right, Faye, back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Rodney. And great suggestion, Lisa, for you to stay later, because I actually have an on the side request for you to stay on about something different. And you're not in trouble. Lisa's not in trouble. She's awesome. Just saying that. All right. So we do want to touch back on some resources that we offer to help you with SLO. As we said in the beginning of training, our job here at the agency is to provide those templates, resources, so that you could also give training to your educators. And so I will give you a field trip in a little bit, but these are just a few highlights of some of the resources that we offer. So this again is already in your Google Sites that Rodney created and shared with you in the logistics email that you've been using to access all the work session activities. So this one is the quality review tool. And this helps with ensuring that the components are met in terms of content, rigor of the target, and then quality of assessment. So as some of you may know, I do not really like talking as much. And even with our trainings, I like to invoke thinking. So in looking at this document, and if it's not clear how it's projected on the screen, I'm not sure why, I'll read to you the questions that are on here. So the first one is, how does the priority standard and learning objective identify specific knowledge and or skills that are essential for students to attain in the course or grade? Next question, is the priority standard and learning objective statement broad enough that it captures the major content, but focused enough that it is measurable? It's a yes or no question. And thanks for dropping that in the link, Rodney, for easy access. Question 3, based on student starting points, is the learning objective possible for all students to realistically attain while also representing a rigorous interval of learning? And to explain. And the last question is, how does the evidence source assessment measure the identified content or skills of the priority standard and learning objective? So as you're thinking about those questions, when you use this tool, what do you think are benefits that you can get from using this or asking these questions? And I'll ask for a volunteer, and then I will be choosing, because that's part of, I try to incorporate our indicator standards, right? Our rubric, and part of that in questioning is asking volunteers and non-volunteers. So let's get one volunteer.
Ask your question again.
So as you are thinking about this document, what is the benefit of asking these questions or using this document?
Well, I hate to give a circular answer, but it does give you a few questions so you can do that quick quality check just to kind of make sure that you're adhering to the process.
Yes, finger snaps for you, Will, because exactly that's on my script. On my script, it says that when you use this tool, it gives you not the quality of the SLO, right? You're checking for that. And also, as you use this document, it ensures that consistency across the board. Although the teachers are doing different SLOs, hitting different targets, you see that the components that are required of the SLO are there. So hats off to you. All right, anybody else? Again, in thinking about using this document or asking these questions, outside of consistency and quality of SLOs, what could be the benefit of using this? So remember, we have multiple roles, right? Multiple people involved. So what Will mentioned was pretty much for the educator side. You know, you ensure that you have the high quality. How about for the principals or evaluators? Is this beneficial to them to have something like this? Yeah, I see a nod. So I'll move on to my non-volunteer and see. Let's see. My friend Kalandra, are you there? What benefit could this give to our evaluators, if our principals, if they use this tool?
I think it would provide them with a little bit more clarity as to how to help the educators with their SLOs in guiding them, and also can serve as a check-in point as well.
Absolutely. Again, it's like you reading my script. You use the word clarity and guidance, right? So as you are approving, you also need to know how are you approving things. So this is a benefit of you using this tool. You are able to let your principals or evaluators know, hey, we're not changing the standard. This is, we're going to be consistent, and this is how you do it by using this tool. Also, if you complete this form, it could serve as an assurance that you have reviewed all of the SLOs and that you have gone through that approval process. So thanks for that. See, it's not too late in the day to tap into that thinking brain. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to belabor this, but this is another form, which is the assessment checklist. So, people usually don't like the word checklist. I like it. I'm learning to fly a plane. So I have my private pilot checklist whenever I get inside the plane. I love checklists. But in terms of education, we do love our rubric much more than that. With the assessment checklist, it's a checklist, but if it doesn't apply, then of course it doesn't matter if that's left blank in your checklist. But there are different sections, and number one thing, of course, is we want to check for alignment with the standards. And then if there are multiple choice questions, then we want to do our best to have these types of questions fall under the yes. If it's somewhat, then that's fine, but probably there's too many no's. Of course, there's also that room for professional judgment, right? If you are like at a lower grade, then some of those students might need more of the multiple choice rather than the part where they have to do an extended response. So assessments for lower grades might not apply in terms of the checklist, the section where you're asking those lengthy extended responses. All right, so, and this is our state SLO rubric. I mentioned in the morning that this was implemented in 2021 in response to the COVID flexibility. Everybody was struggling. And so like the verbiage pretty much is evidence of student growth. And again, your districts are allowed to come up with your own criteria. Some districts really put the bar really higher than what we have, so their cutoffs are much higher. I've seen that. I don't think I've ever seen a district that has lowered what we have suggested here in our template to use. But just make sure to submit that with your ADEPT plan if you're the ADEPT coordinator. If you're not, we know we have friends here from the district and some that are coming in as a role more of as a consultant, then just be in touch with your ADEPT coordinator because they are the ones that submit this to us. All right, and then we do have our website with a wealth of resources. And what I'll actually do is take you on a quick field trip because we are undergoing web updates. So I am gonna share my screen. And this is our website. If you go to ed.sc.gov, you go to educators, you can click learn more here, or you could also go here. Either way, you will get to another menu. And then our office is Educator Effectiveness and Leadership Development. Decide on evaluations is Educator Effectiveness. So that's on your menu under instruction. And then if you scroll down here would be pretty much Rodney's box. Yeah, he is our SLO coordinator. So these are grayed out because we're still working on that. We have strict accessibility requirements, so please be patient. But many of the resources could be found on this link, which is currently active, about student learning objectives. And again, your Google Sites have like the core resources that you need in terms of facilitating training or sharing the knowledge about SLO. And I do know that one of your responses this morning was like, I do want examples and I want recent examples. So we are in 2022 and we did come up with these new templates and samples in 21. So they're fairly new. So hopefully those are useful to you and to your educators. I will unshare the screen and then just show you our slide for the contacts for our office. As Rodney said, you all have different contacts in our office, but we do our best to help each other. If we are out, somebody else will jump in. You will be redirected to somebody to assist you. So while I'm pulling that last slide back up, I'll have Rodney jump in because I believe he said he wanted to add some additional knowledge or tips to you guys.
Oh, yeah, no, I believe you covered everything except I just wanted to add that we've updated the SLO Process Manual. The last version, I think, was like 2017. So we've updated that publication, and it should be ready um, sometime in June. But it'll be accessible on the same web page as the other SLO items that Faye just shared. That's about it, other than the actual SLO page that she took you to, there's a landing page. It's just going to look a little bit different to feature the updates that we're adding this school year. So those of you who have seen or have used our page in the past and have assessed it that way or gotten to it that way, it just may look a little different now, but a lot of the same materials will be there, including that SLO process manual that we're updating for the 2022 year. Outside of that, I believe that you've covered all the support materials for the SLO process.
That's awesome. And I've dropped in the chat, which is also a link in your Google Sites, for the survey for this training. We do continuously strive for improvement and growth ourselves and want to make sure that we are reaching our goals for our training. So if you would please take time to complete that. We know that Lisa wants to stay in and ask questions and not hold you back, but I am the kind of person that listens and lingers. I may not have a question, but I like learning from somebody else. So like Rodney said, you are welcome to do that as well. If you have your own questions, please stay on with us in this room. But Lisa, if you're ready.
Okay, so I just had, it's kind of like a learning goal question, and connecting it to the rubric. Like you mentioned, the rubric kind of adjusted in 2020 for last school year, as well as the 21-22 school year, where it's focused on student growth. So I guess my question with that is, if their goal is written, let's say elementary school, maybe like third grade, all students will increase their reading comprehension of informational text with using various text features. If that's their goal, which would probably be written a little nicer than that, but just along those lines, as long as they have evidence that the students grew, that's fine. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to meet their MAP target. Is that correct?
You're talking about the this as an SLO?
Yes. So like I guess I have a lot of teachers. Well, let me get your answer first. So we're focused on growth, right? It's not necessarily them meeting a target, or is it?
It is. So that learning target would be established. So whatever that target is, the teacher would set that using that baseline data assessment, so that the target isn't too high. That'll kind of give a teacher an indication. So I'm just thinking something that's really reading let's say it was lower level. Let's say it was like vocabulary. The kid was going to increase say there were so many words they had to know by the end of the year, so they would have to know 80% of those words. And each kid, so let's say that the teacher gave the baseline assessment and there are several kids that look like it's going to be difficult for them to get to that target by the end of the year. So their learning target may not be 80%. Their learning target might be 50, or at the mid course it could be 50%. So the it's not all about everybody meeting that 80%. It's about everybody showing growth. So that baseline is important. And even looking at some trend data to kind of see where kids have performed alike those kids, or that particular kid, or those particular kids in previous years in that area, to kind of give you an idea where kids can go. And also at that mid course, you may see that, wow, those kids may have started off low, but now they're right along with everybody else, or they've exceeded everybody else. So that will be a time to adjust that
Their
learning
goal.
that goal.
Okay. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure that it was still, I guess your example right there that you gave, where somebody is maybe 3 or 2 grade levels below everybody else. I just wanted to make sure that it's still acceptable, that they're, by the end of the year, they might not be on target with where they need to be to go to third grade, but they did show that growth.
Absolutely.
And we have evidence of the growth. I just wanted to make sure. We ran into some issues with that this year, and I was on the side where we're focused on the growth, and we had to see the baseline where they started, where we expected them to go. It wasn't that they were necessarily ready and on great, which we want them to be, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't totally off or missed something somewhere.
Right. And see, the beautiful part about that SLO is that teachers will be able to see, like, and identify some strategies that work with those lower performing students that they can use, not just with that particular kid, but from years to come. And I'll be able to share those strategies and resources with other teachers on the grade level in the school. So believe it or not, the SLO is a very meaningful piece when it's done the correct way. It really shows teachers how to teach, how to look at how to improve, where they need to improve. It allows for districts to put support resources in place, whether it's people or materials, to help teachers reach those goals and to be able to move those students whether they're behind or whether they're above. The SLO process is a great way to view great teaching.
Okay. So that was my main question, is like, I guess going back to the goal, like we're still writing the goal as if all students are going to be doing whatever, but you're still focused on individual growth goals, and you're providing the evidence for those individual students through your mid-course and end of course, which the whole mid-course is whenever we allow them to make adjustments as needed. So anyway, that was really my main question. I just wanted to make sure that I was on the right track. Because I think the last time I attended this training was pre-COVID. So that's kind of why I attended this year. I was like, let me just make sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. There have been a few changes since then. Thank you so much. So, any other, have some additional questions you said though?
No, that was really, that was my main one. The whole learning goal and connecting it to evidence.
Good.
Well, for me, I put on my survey that I need to check, like I said earlier, finding out what the instructional strategies are, what kind of data that we use or whatever. So I have to get with the alphabet of academics, and then I'll probably have questions for you later.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And as the SLO coordinator, I'll probably be your main. Of course, we have district reps at the state in our office, right? But that's my cup of tea, which would be the SLO. So feel free to reach directly out to me.
Okay.
rmed.sc.gov. I'm putting my email address in the chat box so you'll have it. But any questions, any questions, that's anybody, any support you need, feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for.
And thank you, Faye, too. You did answer my question the other day. I appreciate it when you emailed me back. Thank you.
You are welcome. I think Calandra has her hand up. Calandra, go ahead and hop on the mic.
I do really quick. First of all, thank you both. You've been very supportive this year, and I've reached out to you all both about separate questions regarding SLOs and just various trainings that I've attended. I just had a quick, not necessarily a question, but if I could send you a format. I'm glad you have the screen up to that particular SLO scoring rubric. Before COVID and before I was in this position, we had a lot of teachers use a template that a person who was previously in this role would share out. And I just want to send it to you just for you to review and look at what I currently have as our business, our SLO business document. Of how we are carrying out our SLOs within our district. I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure that I could still have that particular form in place, because, and the reason why I say that is because I still have some teachers that use that particular, it's like a Google Excel sheet that helps them to calculate scores and to determine growth in certain content areas. I wanted to just share that with you all, just for you to provide me with feedback of even maybe some things that I could possibly change on it so that it correlates more with what we have in place. I don't know necessarily if it does or not. I was just wanting some feedback there. So I'm gonna by the end of the week, I'll find that from one of our teachers, and then I'll share that with you if that's okay. And maybe you guys can provide me with some feedback on the usage of that Google sheet in calculating SLO scores.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank y'all again. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, Rodney, and I will be